What's going on, guys? This is Aiden, Bandwagon Sports. This is our third video in what has been a couple of months. I am sorry for that, but we are back and we are going to start uploading, and I'm going to be pushing out content for the foreseeable future. This video, we are talking about the ACC, and the Pac-12 and what's kind of going on with them. The Big 12, SEC, like all the Power 5 conferences, there's a lot going on in terms of realignment and what's going on like in the actual conferences with all the teams. There's a ton going on, including what's going on with the Pac-12 right now, and the fact that they're down to 4 or 2 teams. They everybody knows they lost USC and UCLA to the Big Ten. This happened months ago, right around the time Oklahoma and Texas left for the SEC. Then I think it was Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and Arizona State are all leaving the Pac-12 and going to the Big 12. So that's already 6 teams that had left. And then Oregon, Washington headed to the Big 10. So you have 4 teams going to the Big 10 from the Pac-12. And you have 4 teams going to the Big 12 from the Pac-12. For these teams, for the schools specifically, I love this move. This move for it, any of the teams that left, this is a fantastic move. If the teams still in the Pac-12 do not move from the Pac-12, they're going to ruin their school and ruin their program because they are not going to make money. The Pac-12 is dissolving essentially, and there's just nothing that those teams can do to help that. The Pac-12, it's already done. There's no saving that conference. The ACC is honestly looking like it's going down the same exact road that the Pac-12 was. The ACC hasn't gained a single team from, 12 teams total have moved conferences, maybe like 14, 16 maybe, have moved conferences, and the ACC has not picked up any teams. And that is in my opinion, that is terrible for the ACC because you have Clemson and FSU who are going to leave, whether it's for the SEC, whether it's for the Big Ten, whether it's tomorrow or next year. Clemson and FSU are leaving. They have expressed many times that they want to leave. They just don't know who they're going to, and they just don't know when yet. It's extremely hard as a school to just switch conferences because you have to think about all of your sports and all of your teams and how they're going to fare in those conferences. You can't just think about football. You can't just think about baseball, track, swimming, archery, water polo. You have to think about every single one of your sports teams. And that is extremely hard to do because there aren't any conferences where every single sports team from a school is going to dominate. Yes, there could be some teams like, I don't know. There are some schools that have teams that can compete across most sports, but there's not going to be a team that can go to any conference and compete in every single sport. So you have to pick and choose which ones you want to be good at and which ones you don't. If you go to if a team, I don't know, let's say Georgia or like Missouri went to the Big 12 to play basketball. They aren't if they looked at it as the Big 12, they would probably be title contenders in football, in baseball, but basketball, you're there. Like, it's so hard. You have to be able to pick and choose which sports you want to be good at and which sports you want to put your main focus into, because there are going to be teams there are going to be sports teams in your school that don't get as much attention because they aren't going to be good. They aren't going to be able to compete at such a high level with the other teams in the other conferences. It's it is an incredibly hard thing to do to be good at every sport. I think the closest we've seen to doing that is in Alabama, because they've had an outstanding basketball program, an outstanding football program, a pretty darn good baseball program. Uh, their women's basketball is okay. Their softball is pretty good. I don't know about their track and field or their gymnastics or anything, but their teams are pretty good. Um, there's that's the closest to complete sports dominance that you can get, is what Alabama has been doing. I mean, maybe you could throw in Tennessee, maybe Kentucky a couple years ago, but I think Alabama last year, or the season that just passed, is the closest that any team has ever been, or any school has ever been, to complete sport dominance. Um, the ACC has declined Cal and Stanford from joining their conferences. I think I think that move would be really good for Cal. I think it would be really good for the ACC, and I think it would be good for Cal and Stanford, because both of those programs, not just in football, but in most sports, Cal and Stanford aren't good, and neither are the teams in the ACC. I'm not saying that they're going to compete, but I'm saying they are going to have a better chance to compete when they are playing in the ACC rather than the Big 12, or heck, even the Sun Belt. I think they have a better chance to compete in the ACC than they do the Sun Belt. And the Sun Belt is a group of five conference. By not declining, or by declining Cal and Stanford, the ACC is failing to bolster their legitimacy as a conference, because they aren't contending for titles anymore. They aren't competing for New Year's Six bowls. They hardly are competing for New Year's Six bowls. They're they're not competitive. There's one, maybe two teams that are good every single season, and that's really Clemson, and what the past couple years has been North Carolina. I mean, you have Wake Forest, NC State, Florida State, who have been climbing up the rankings. I mean, Pitt, but they aren't that good. They're good for the ACC because the ACC is terrible, but they're not good in terms of college football, and that's what people are looking for. And the ACC doesn't have a team like Alabama or Georgia who's going to steadily contest for a title every single year. So they have to have more teams and more quality. It's like when think about it as like an assembly line and why it was created. If you have one person who's doing an outstanding job, or who's doing an okay job and making things look good, and then you have and then like, so one factory has that one person doing one thing, and then the other factory has a bunch of teams doing okay jobs, but it's a bunch of teams doing it. There's going to be more coming out of that conference or that factory with people doing okay jobs than there is with one person doing a great job. And the ACC has one person doing a great job right now. And it's not even really doing a great job, because Clemson hasn't contended for a title since 2018, 2019. That 4 or 5 years ago. Clemson is not as good as they used to be. And the ACC holding on to Clemson and Clemson not being good is why the ACC will fall apart and why at some point the Big 10, the Big 12, and the SEC are going to be the only three conferences remaining. The SEC does not need to add more teams. But, neither does the Big 10 or the Big 12. But it's gonna have to happen because the teams in the ACC aren't gonna have a conference to go to soon. The teams in the ACC, much like the teams in the Pac-12, are going to want to move conferences because the ACC is not a good conference. For when you win the ACC, you're not getting as much credibility as if you were to win the SEC or the Big 10 or the Big 12. It's not as hard to win the ACC. So the teams that are winning the ACC aren't getting the recognition that they deserve. They're not getting, not even that they deserve, the recognition that they would if they won the SEC, or they won the Big 10, or they won the Big 12. The ACC is going to dissolve exactly like the Pac-12 because the ACC does not have the teams, it doesn't have the strength, it doesn't have the greatness to compete with the SEC, the Big 10, and the Big 12. It doesn't have those consistent teams, and it doesn't have those outstanding programs that have dominated. They don't have a dominating team. They just have Clemson. Clemson is their backbone right now. Clemson is everything for them. Clemson is the only thing that has held the ACC these past 10 years. You had Florida State. You had Miami at some point. You had UNC at some point. But the past 10 years has been all Clemson. And Clemson for a couple years there, they did a good job. But now that all of the teams in the ACC are just okay, are just good, not great, not the best ever, the ACC cannot compete, and they won't be able to bring titles and revenue and TV deals into their conference, and they won't be able to pay the programs and the colleges what they deserve for being a part of the conference. They won't be able to keep up with the pay that the SEC, the Big 10, and the Big 12 are going to be able to pay, because the ACC will stop making revenue because those teams aren't good. Either the commissioner of the ACC has to change, or the ACC is going to dissolve. There will not be an ACC if something either doesn't snap with the commissioner, or the commissioner just doesn't leave. He's not doing a good job right now because he's not adding teams. He needs to add teams, especially when there was essentially at some point there was 12 up for grabs. He managed to grab 0, and he declined 2. Well, he could have had 2, but they declined it. No, they didn't want it. In the future, there will be 3 conferences, and these 3 conferences will be the only conferences, and they'll be power conferences, because there's going to be like 20 teams in each conference, and they're just, out of those 3 conferences, they're just going to keep competing, and at some point, it's going to get to where it's like an NFL, or it's going to be a professional sports league soon. It really already is, because all of the athletes are getting paid, whether they play or not. All of these 5-star, 4-star recruits are getting NIL deals before they even get to college. There's been reports on a recruit for Florida State who's not committed there getting checks bi-weekly from Florida State. He's gotten a new car. He's gotten a new like he gets thousands of dollars every 2 weeks from Florida State, and he's not even committed there. He's not even in college yet. There, there's so with the NIL. Yes, I love the players are making money, but there for right now there's not what am I trying to say? There's no boundaries. There's no rules, limits. There. Oh, what's the word? There's no. It's not supervised. Oh, there's nothing. Everything's under the table. Everything's just swept under the rug, and everything is done discreetly, and it's not really public. What happens? It's going to get to the point where teams are going to be throwing it out basically contracts. Come here, you'll get this money for kids who were 17, 16, 17, 18 years old who haven't even touched a college football field yet. And they're going to be getting millions of dollars and haven't even touched a college football field yet. Some rules, some form of something needs to be put in place, or else one, the NCAA will be done, and two, the NCAA football will turn into kind of like the NBA G League for the NBA or for the NFL. The NCAA football will be the NFL's G League, and that's not what I want to see. Because college football, there's just something about these kids playing their hearts out because they don't have money yet, versus watching these kids play and be like, oh, I got $1 million home to go home to. They already have money. They already have they're. It takes the work and the effort out of playing football, which is a part of the reason I don't watch as much NFL and as much professional sports, because they are making their money and they don't have anything to play for. They don't have anything to prove because they are guaranteed their money whether they play or not. We've seen it a lot with NBA superstars. They play 40 games a season and get paid $40 million. The dudes that play 82 games a year get paid less than the dudes who play 30, 40, 50 games a year. And it's same way with the NFL. There's no heart in the game, and it soon will not be entertaining to watch because in the NCAA will soon not have any heart in the game because they just won't. They will have their $1 million to go home to. They will have their California King waterbed, freaking Sleep Number adjustable breathable mattress, and their 14 million supercars. They will know that they're getting paid without having to go out and work. And it will take the heart out of the game, and it will take the fun out of watching these kids compete. I think the ACC is just as much done as the Pac-12 is. It's just a matter of when they will be done. The Pac-12, everybody knows, because it's been going on for a week and a half. Everybody knows the Pac-12 is done. The ACC is going to follow. It will. There's not going to be anything that anybody can do about it. And I really hope that they get some NIL restrictions and rules put in place to where it doesn't take the heart and the fun out of watching the game. Let me know your guys' thoughts and comments down below. And I will see you guys in the next one.